Welcome to Superchargers. I'm Daniel Thomas. Let's go. G'day, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Your support sure means a heck of a lot. My guest on this episode is Henry Woodman. Henry is a visionary entrepreneur and a media pioneer who is the co-founder of Anemoia Media. He recently published the historical fiction book, The Reincarnation of Marie, which was originally written by his father, Jim Woodman. It's a timeless love story transcending death set against the backdrop of war and art. Henry is currently developing a TV series based on the book. It was awesome to chat to him. Let's get into it.
I gotta say, I'm impressed. An Aussie living in Hamburg. I got German roots. I have an aunt in Hamburg, and I was in Australia last November, December. So I love that country. So I don't know why I moved to Germany, but okay.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, no, it's I've been here 10 years primarily for family. I downloaded the book yesterday and I'm into the second chapter, and I must say I'm really enjoying it. I'm deeply curious as to what's in store. I'll attempt to give the listeners a little bit of background on the story. In short, it's set in 1950s Paris, and Jan, a French soldier, falls in love with a French artist, Marie. He actually falls in love with her through reading her journal, which was published in the 1800s. So she's not alive. Having only read this first couple of chapters, I can see that he's kind of getting obsessed. This leads to a doomed love affair with a young French art student. And so, like I say, I'm really curious to see how that plays out. But the book was originally written by your father, Jim Woodman, and you got a hold of this, took it on yourself to get it published. Is that correct?
Yeah. What happened was back in the early 80s, I moved to Los Angeles with dreams of producing and directing movies. That never happened. And so while I was there, my sister's helping my dad move. I'm from South Florida. So she was moving him, and there was a manuscript sitting in the garage, and she asked him, "What is this?" My dad was a writer, by the way. And he wrote nonfiction travel log stuff, but he wrote this love story and explains it to my sister. And she says, "That's really interesting. Can I read it?" He says, "Sure." She reads it. She falls in love. She goes, "Oh my God, it's amazing." So she calls me up and she goes, "I know you're in LA. This would make a great movie. Can I send you this?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course." Sits on my nightstand for months. I don't have a date. One Friday night, I read it. I couldn't put it down. I fell in love with it. I was in tears. I called my dad. I said, "I got to have this. I don't have any money. Can I give you $1? Make a contract out of $1. So I bought the rights. And I thought, how nepotistic of me. It's my dad, right? So I call a friend of mine who was producing a movie at the time. And I said, "Listen, I want you to read this." And he goes, "Henry, for God's sakes, I don't have time." I said, "No, take your time. No rush." So 3 days later, he calls me up and says, "Couldn't put it down. I loved it. We were meant to do this," right? And of course, he got screwed by Vestron Video, the one that was making the movie. I went to America to producing game shows. Anyway, make a long story short, I said, "One of these days we're going to finish it." Years go by. I started a tech company. I sold it a couple of years ago, and I called them up. I said, "Okay, let's do it. But first, I have to publish the book." So the book, and please give it a review. The book is a springboard for what will be the TV series. And I can explain more about what happens with that. It's a far deeper dive into the past lives of Marie, who is a real character, and Jan, who is now Jonathan. And now we've updated it to the 70s and made him an American as opposed to French because, the audience thing. So what we've done is we've sort of gone through the past lives and how they intertwine with the current lives. And this is where we ask those questions. All this shit karma I got to pay, or the sins of the father, is that real? And are there soulmates? And who is this guy, Daniel? Was he in my life at some point? And, stuff like that. These pieces of the puzzle are all laid out. And I don't know if I should divulge this, but we have a twist in the story. So Marie, this is true. Marie, the original Marie, I don't know if we're recording or if you want to start.
We are recording. No, we are.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. Marie, who is a real character and had a bestseller after her death. She wrote a journal when she was 14 and died at 24. And in the writing of the journal, she wrote about things that really at the time women didn't even talk about, sexuality and masturbation and things of that nature. And it became a bestseller after her death internationally. So what happened was she also had a pen pal relationship with another famous writer called Maupassant. She was anonymous. So in the series that we're creating, we have this pen pal relationship. She runs into him in southern France. He's a lecherous pig. He rapes her, right, in the series. And so in the future, we find out that Guy Maupassant is Jonathan reincarnated, our protagonist, and she has to right the wrong, if you will. So what she does is she wants to get back at him, even though they're soulmates and they are meant to be. There's still some karma that needs to be paid back, if you will. And that's kind of the twists and turns in the series.
These themes are awesome. There's a lot of big ones and a lot of sort of smaller themes there. But this reincarnation, I'm wondering why did your father not sort of pursue getting it published originally? Did he just write it for himself, or did he intend to get it published?
Yeah. So I don't believe he ever intended to get it published, because when my sister asked him, he says, no, it was just a tribute to a friend of mine. We never got the real story, whether there really was the friend or it was him that had this obsessive passion, obsession with Marie. But when he wrote it, I think it was somewhat cathartic. He
Mm.
was not a love story romance writer. He was a travel writer. I mean, he wrote Air Travel Bargains and Discovering Yucatan and Nazca and stuff that you wouldn't think was romantic at all. But he had this incredible passion, and it comes out when you read the book, obviously. So we don't know if it's him or it actually was another person that told him that story.
Mm. It's interesting. It sounds like cathartic process was a cathartic process for him, but also for you, perhaps in a way. And I'm interested in your father's influence. Like my father's a documentary filmmaker, so I grew up watching him. I sat in editing suites watching him splice film together. He made a film about my football team for a year, so I had the cameras, from very young. And naturally, I've sort of followed this storytelling path. And growing up like that, no doubt had an influence on me. And it's interesting that you have also made some travel films, and it's interesting that your father was a travel writer and you ended up making travel films. Do you think there's some kind of connection there?
Oh, without a doubt. When I was younger and thinking, what do I do with my life? And I thought, I want to be an architect. And so I took a course in drafting, and I realized there was a lot of math and stuff there. And I'm like, this is before computers. And I thought, screw that. Uh, and I ended up on a journey to Honduras as a 16-year-old in the jungles looking for a lost city. ABC Sportsman went down and filmed a documentary about it. I went, this is what I want to do. I want to travel around the world and work with a bunch of fun guys and make TV. Yes, right. So I ended up going to college, studying radio and film and television in college. Then I moved to Los Angeles, with aspirations and dreams of producing, directing movies. Of course, that never happened. And then I ended up doing travel films because of my father. I was in the film business doing things on the side. And, I got stuff working first as what's called a PA, a production assistant, and then sound guy. And then I ended up as the assistant director, then the producer. And so for 10 years, I was producing travel films. And after a decade, I got so tired of traveling and getting on a plane every couple of weeks. I was like, oh. So I ended up doing game shows in Chile because it went from a dictatorship to a democracy. So again, I think I'm an opportunist because I took advantage. Oh my God, there's a democracy and they have a new TV station and they need content. So I borrowed an idea from a show in the US and I took it to Chile And it was the top rated show for its demographic, youth. You know, it was called Machos, where you would, you know, date strange people and talk about it on this game show. And stayed in Chile for about a year or so, and thought, yeah, uh, you know what? I kind of miss traveling. It gets in your blood, which kind of led to where I ended up. I don't know if I should go on, but you know, I ended up falling in love at the time. The digital revolution was starting, and I realized you could actually edit film with digital, like cut and paste. Whoa, this is the, you know, mid 90s, right? And so then I realized you can create a 360-degree tour of a room or a destination, right? So I started a company called World Travel Vision, which was doing virtual tours for travel destinations and hotels. And eventually the hotels would say, how do we put this stuff on this new World Wide Web thingy? You know, this is the late 90s. And I'm like, I don't know, send them a CD-ROM. And yeah, you know, that's how old I am. And so they said, yeah, but they don't know what to do with it. There were no standards. I said, all right, let me see what I can do to help. So I pivoted. I created a company called Ice Portal, Internet Content Exchange. So essentially, what if you go to any travel website right now on any planet, Germany or, you know, the US or Australia, and you click on a hotel image, that would have come from our servers. So we would collect content from hoteliers, size, tag, categorize, and distribute to the various travel websites around the world. So I sold that business a few years ago. And I said to my friend, all right, you know, remember that book?
Full circle.
Now we're going to, yeah, we're going to go back and we're going to close that chapter. And, you know, you never want to retire in life. You kind of want to just have a passion or a purpose that makes you get up in the mornings.
Not to bring it back to me too much, but it's interesting you said architecture, because I actually pursued the architecture path until I got burnt out. So I took a complete left turn after 10 years in architecture and left with the rock band. So
Okay. So you're going to know this. So at 15, I had an internship at a teeny tiny little architecture firm. They were just starting out. There were 3 people. They turned out to be a company called Arquitectonica. I don't know if you know that
I
architecture.
know them. Yeah, yeah.
One of the largest in the world now. I could meet somebody. Yeah.
Well, don't get me started on the architecture industry. It's a beast. You know, for me, it was the creative aspect that attracted me to it. And then it became very much about grinding out deadlines and just drafting like a CAD monkey, 8 hours a day. You know, and occasionally having some creative input. And you know, I did jobs that I'm really proud of. But 10 years was, and I think it's common in that industry that a lot of architects burn out or career change. But I took a complete left turn and went to London, and it changed my entire life.
Wow.
Yeah, but I'm wondering how important, going full circle to to this story you're dealing with now and turning into a series, how important is personal connection to you in story?
Well, obviously, you know, since Dad wrote it and I've been sitting on it for the better part of 4 decades, it is a passion project, obviously. And, you know, I say that and it seems somewhat narcissistic, like, oh, you know, family and nepotism and stuff. But the reality is, and as you've started reading it, when people do get around to reading it, they're like, oh my God. For example, I have a friend who's a writer and PR guy. And he goes, all right, Henry, I'll read it, you know, I pull teeth. And he called me up and he goes, this was really good. I mean, your dad was a great writer. I mean, it was excellent. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, and I was like in tears. And I'm like, I know. It's a bittersweet ending. So he did write this compelling story as a sort of observer, where as you know, because you read the beginning, he was told by his friend, meet me at the train station, I'm on my way, you know, I was on furlough for going, and I'm going back to war, so meet me at the train station, I have to tell you something. And of course Jan shows up. He hasn't slept in days because he's been with his reincarnated love. And so he recounts the story he told, and that's kind of the beauty of it. It's like, this is what I told. And he goes back and he researches Marie Barstreseff, who's the original, the genesis of all of this, because she wrote this journal, I Am the Most Interesting Woman of All, in the late 1800s. And she wrote some really, really passionate stuff. And she was more than just a writer, by the way. She was an artist whose paintings are in museums around the world.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it's when you put it in context, when you listen to, I was listening to the audio version, when you hear her writing and her dialogue, when you put it in context that was the 1800s, it's very progressive, it's very outlandish, like you say. So
she
I
was
think
the
it's,
Madonna. Yeah, she was the Madonna or the Lady
yeah,
Gaga of her time.
yeah. So when you actually realize that this is a couple of hundred years ago, like this is people were not, I mean, even in the 50s, in the 1950s, there was repressed female voices. So for her to be speaking in such a liberal way, it's like she was in the 60s, you
Yeah,
know?
part of it too in the series, she has a famous painting called Les Enfants, where there are these three boys sitting there in a corner talking, and down the sidewalk is a girl, and she says, "What do you notice about this?" Like, oh, the boys are talking. No, the girl is being left out. She was somewhat of an early on feminist back in the
Mm,
late 1800s. And part of the man's world of painting is she couldn't get into a lot of the art schools. She couldn't get into the art contests because it was a man's world. And she was, at least she felt she was just as good, if not better, but she was shunned from that world because of her femininity.
mm. But the idea of a man falling in love with a writer is pretty cool. I haven't really seen, there's the movie Her where he falls in love with where Joaquin falls in love with his what do you call it? His Siri, you know. But the fact that the writing and what she's saying is so powerful that this guy becomes infatuated is very unique. Um,
And I think also you have to consider the times
mm,
because there were no, internet connections and no social media and no wasting time looking at a screen, right? So if he starts reading and he feels he's in a city where he doesn't really know anybody and he finds this connection with the writer, who obviously died, 100 years earlier, he actually feels connected. And that's where I feel like we are connected. There's something she's looking for me. She says in her book, through time, I will find you, right?
mm,
And he even compares his dates with this fictitious woman. So he finds himself eerily obsessed to the point where he then realizes, I have lost my mind. I've fallen in love with a dead woman. This is crazy, right? Even sees a psychiatrist.
mm. This timelessness, though, the fact that you're covering lots of different time periods, they're sort of you're harmonizing different time periods and different like formats.
Yeah,
It's a very cool blend of
yeah.
those things. What do you?
And sort of, sorry, Daniel. Therein lies sort of the rub is when we get into the series, we do a far deeper dive. This the book, The Reincarnation of Marie, obviously, is a very linear guy tells a story about falling in love with a woman who wrote a book and she's dead, and he finds her reincarnation. Now we go in and we go, okay, who are these people and what connections are they intertwined in the current life? I mean, all of the people in our current lives, were they in a past life and did we wrong them or did we right them? Or are we getting rewarded or are we getting payback? I mean, these are things that are obviously age-old questions about karma and sins of the father and soulmates and things like that. We don't answer the questions, obviously, but we ask, we don't ask the questions, we possess, oh, so that's why this happened, because something in a prior life, you know what I mean? So the series really doesn't is not linear. We throw out a lot of pieces to a puzzle, and then it all starts to come together and we realize, oh yeah, okay. Even though I love her, there are two sides to this coin. I have to pay back some event from before. Oh yeah. So It
It's
does do this little twisty turny.
it's not about preaching, right? It's about posing, offering questions.
Bingo.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a friend in Australia, and he insists we knew each other in a past life.
You never know. I mean, if you believe in past lives and you believe in the, yeah, and it asks the questions too. It's like, is it past life or is it a, this quantum time difference? Like, these things that they say, listen, there are multiple quantum yous, right? Daniel made a decision at some point in his life to leave architecture, and here you are. The other Daniel is still in
Mm.
architecture. Where is he? Right. And those are the questions that you kind of ask. And not to say we're asking the question, but that's where we look at this deep. There's got to be more. I mean, we're such an infinitesimal little piece of this massive universe. What does it all mean? Are we just a bug? We were born, we live, we die, and end of story? Or is there some interconnection, some soul, some, quantum? I don't know, but it's a great thought process.
These sliding door moments are crazy when you break them down in all of our lives. There was one moment in London that if I hadn't taken that taxi, I wouldn't have ended up in Germany. And I
Absolutely, you're right.
yeah, and I was trying to get in the taxi, and if I had got, I couldn't get in the taxi; it was too full. If I had gotten in that taxi, other things wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't be living here now. But you can break that down to anything, right?
Every day, every day. There's a great series on Apple TV called Dark Matter
Hmm.
that explores that very possibility of every decision you make, there's a different you and a different metaverse. It's
Hmm.
fascinating.
So, did you see this now that you're adapting? Did you see this as a series from the get go, or did you consider a feature?
Well, let's be clear. When I first read it and I was in Los Angeles, it was the 1980s, right? So there was no
Mm.
streaming, there was no series really. And my idea was, wow, it would make a great movie. Now, it would make a great movie as a simple love story, paranormal romance. But when you think about what it can be, and we thought, you know what, this is a different era with streaming TV and oodles of options. And if you really want to explore that concept, then we go deeper into the lives, which is much longer than a movie, right? And then at the end of season one, if it works, those two souls can go on and get
Mm.
reincarnated anywhere, anytime. And that's the beauty of the series.
Yeah, that's the beauty of this stuff today. Is I mean, it's almost essentially like an 8 hour feature, but with the potential to go on. It's awesome that embracing that where we're at today with this type of. I'm not a fan of the word content because I think it undermines art. If you're just creating content, like I'm personally more interested in kind of what are we trying to say and the artistic thing. But it's awesome that it's it's easy to get stuck on the industry's changing so dramatically. But I'm just a firm believer in the power of like personal stories and authentic stories. So it's really cool. What do you think of the statement, call it truth is stranger than fiction?
Well, we live that almost every day of our lives. Most people who have any interesting experiences or religion or believe in afterlife, that is the truth is straight, or believe in ancient aliens. I mean, it's all around us. I mean, I'm always impressed at how many things on TV talk about paranormal, talk about the truth. And I don't know that we do that because we've seen it, but we want to. It's like religion. We want to believe there's more than this, right? We do have a soulmate, don't we? Right? And it seems sort of less valuable to our lives if you say, no, this is it, man, enjoy it while you can, be a hedonistic, debaucherous whore or whatever, and I think that belief that there's much bigger and greater and stranger things than the truth of this is it, baby.
Mm.
I don't know what, I don't, I mean, I don't have strong beliefs about it. I just know that that's the questions, especially as you get older, that we always ask. I mean, is that it? Is there more? Right? What else happens? If I walk out and I get hit by a bus and that's it. That was my sort of one of my most profound memories as a kid when I just learned how to read. I think I was 6 or 7, and I wasn't reading that well, but it was a headline in my mom's room on a newspaper that said a certain number of people died in a plane crash. And I didn't care. I didn't know any of them. And then I thought to myself, what if one of them was me? Nobody would give a shit, right? That was the profound moment I realized, uh, is this all, we all insignificant? And not that it changed my life, but I remember that moment vividly thinking, what if my name was among that, whatever, 137 people that died? Who would have cared, right?
Mm.
Sorry, that's pretty deep.
No, no, it's questions of fate and timing. Like it's really crazy. Again, that sliding doors thing. You just think, these moments that present. I just try to hold on to a faith that these moments do. These sometimes there's the timing of things where you just and like you said earlier, connections.
Yeah,
Connections that are formed in different ways. They're not even in an airy fairy way. Just these connections that we're forming, and then when they sort of go full circle and come back around at the right time, and you go, oh well, okay, that makes sense.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
Um. Now you consider yourself you enjoy golf, but you don't consider yourself a great golfer. And you were a swimmer as a kid, correct?
Yeah. I like golf just because it challenges me. But you know what? I had shoulder surgery right here a month ago. And before that, I had what's called ossification, bone spurs on the
Mm.
rotator cuff. So I hadn't played in the better part of a year. So I put that because, every time I play, I'm like, I love it. And then when I start to think about it, I suck. So I'm thinking, golf is one of those games where you just don't have to, you just have to play and have fun. But when you get competitive, then I become a shitty golfer.
There's a big message in that. There's a big
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of with life too. You just have to enjoy life and live in the moment,
yes.
not get too competitive.
Yeah. Once you start trying to add some sort of outcome to it or make it a competition, it goes to shit. So,
That's exactly right.
if I
That's
can
exactly.
divulge in a quick golf story, because I'm not a golfer, but a friend of mine was when I was a kid, and we were going to play, and I was like, I don't have any golf clubs, and he's like, you can use my grandfather's set of golf clubs from our attic. He took them through the war in India, right? He carried them through the battlefield, basically. But you can use his clubs. So we get on the first tee, and I took a swing with the one wood. And because the titanium ball was too modern for the old club, the head of the one would just shattered into a million pieces. So on my first swing with these clubs, I was like, I've just destroyed a family heirloom. Like the ball didn't move and the club head just shattered.
Yeah.
And so,
It'd be interesting to see how the golfers of that day with those old, technology and balls would play compared to, the modern day golfers. It'd be an interesting concept. Like the wooden tennis player, the wooden racket tennis player, same thing. All the technology is changing everything.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, and it's about letting the club kind of do the work as well. Like, not
Thank
that I know,
God.
yeah, not that I know
Yeah,
anything
right.
about golf, but uh, it's a challenge. It's a tradition on the show to have guests offer some kind of challenge for the listeners, just based on our discussion or your experience. I did read that you did a gratitude journal for a while. Gratitude is something that's helped you.
Still do. Yeah, every
Cool.
day.
Yeah, the foundation of this show has been based around these little things we can do in like daily life that move us forward in some way or show us something. Is there anything that springs to mind?
Well, at the end of the day, I think the one thing that, I've always felt like I'm lucky and I'm blessed. And I coach small businesses as well. And I say to them, I said, listen, if you want to find, or you want opportunity to find you, better said, you really need two things. You need to prepare and you need to be lucky. Because if you're lucky and you're not prepared, opportunity may just pass you by. And if you're prepared and you're not lucky, you may not see that opportunity. But at the end of the day, you have to put in the work. You don't just sit there and go, oh, they're going to come knocking at my door and back up the truck. No. So part of the other thing is, you know what? It's the hardest thing is to try to let, your thoughts create your life. So it's try to live in the moment and say, listen, be grateful because, you know, my background, obviously, with all the traveling that I've done, I'm still amazed at the gratitude I have every time I eat a bite of food or sleep in a comfortable bed with air conditioning and, I have a roof, I have food for that matter, much less just appreciating it. All those little things, I feel so fortunate, and I try every day to write down things that I am grateful for. Now that my shoulder's working and I can get back in the pool and swim, now that I can, walk the dogs and, that I can have the gratitude for all of these things, and it's sad too, because I'm very aware, being born a white guy in the United States in the 60s. I mean, come on, right? It's hard to screw that up. I tried, but sometimes you see other places and you see those people and you're like, would I have ever done much with that except, live in that environment? So the gratitude to me is a big deal. I have my little morning routines. I get up, walk the dogs, I sit down, I do some gratitude and some meditation, and that's kind of how I start my day. And then I finish my day writing down what I was grateful for that day.
Mm. It's kind of like a gratitude muscle. Like you got to put intention into doing that
Yeah.
daily. Yeah, it's like you say, there were certain things that I thought I wanted when I was younger, but if I'd got those when I was younger, I wouldn't have been ready.
Yeah.
The preparation, like you say, the preparation in
Well, without a doubt.
conjunction.
I
Yeah.
tell people all the time, when I was younger, I would try to buy a car that I couldn't afford to impress people I didn't even know. And now I've had this is my fourth Genesis. I just have a nice, comfortable car that gets me around, and I can afford it now. But now I'm like, why? Who am I trying to impress? And it's a different mindset when you get there and you say, listen, just be happy with what you got. I mean, God, Toyota gets you from A to B. A Genesis is just like a nice Hyundai. So yeah, I hear you.
But you're an opportunist as well, which is cool because there's a certain level of presence and kind of adaptability to be able to pivot. Um, sometimes I've been frustrated because I do a lot of things and I've gone in a lot of different directions, but they've all informed each other and they've all, I don't want to sound too philosophical, but they've all taught different things and different lessons. And they've, particularly creatively, the parallels from the various industries have all just built layers of lessons and skills.
I think I would consider it more of a hedonist opportunist because, when I see I want to travel. Okay. And I like film. Okay. I do travel films.
Mm,
Duh. Right. Um, seeming shortcoming, there's an opportunity in Chile to do programming because they have new government and they added new television stations. So, okay, I want to get laid. I like Latin women, right? I go to Chile and I do a game show about women. All right. So, yeah. And, then I end up doing, these because I want to travel again and I do these virtual tours. And they go, how do we put this on this internet? The opportunity was I said, let me see what I can do to help. I didn't know anything about technology. Oh, they used to have these travel agents that would have this green screen. There were no pictures. Now the internet comes around. They don't have the capacity to deliver the picture. Oh, that's an opportunity. Now, wasn't much hedonism, but that's taking advantage of, I was at the right place at the right time. And I thought, yeah, I could do this. I could help this guy out. And obviously this one is more of, it's a passion. I just kind of love the concept and I have the time and, just want to close that chapter. And the book was the springboard, if you will.
mm. No, the intersection between things is very cool. And why not? If you're passionate about something and then you have skills in another area, is there some intersection that can like help people or find a solution to something exactly
Yeah.
as you did? Yeah, I found it frustrating in some meetings for particularly with film projects when we're all sitting there and it was like, I reckon we should like have this action scene or we should have this. And I just sort of sit there and say, guys, like, what are we trying to say? You know, why, what are we trying to say? And unless something is trying to say something, like we said earlier, posing questions, offering perspectives, for me personally, that's what's important in these stories. And as a storyteller, for me, it's like, what can I bring to that? What can I offer
Right.
to that? And as long as we're trying to say something in a non-preachy way, I think that's a good way to go. And with what you're doing with this, there's a lot that's, from what I can see so far, that's saying a lot.
Yeah. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, and I have these conversations with some of the businesses I coach, and I say, and what exactly what are you solving? I mean, there are a lot of businesses that go out there and they think, oh, I'm going to make a better mouse, not a better mousetrap. I'm going to make this because people will come. Nah, no, not really. Are you solving a problem they have? Then maybe. And are you going to make it frictionless for them to know about it and believe in it? Yeah. And the same concept holds here. I mean, now I think the opportunity, because there's more streamers. I mean, now publishing a book is,
Mm.
I don't know how many millions of books are published every year. Nobody makes money on books. Let's be clear. But the passion is, I want to get this out to visually explain this paranormal romance and the thought-provoking. Well, is there stuff that happens in previous lives? That type of thing. So many of the last Oscar nominees were derivatives from books. So that concept, okay, I've got a book. It's a great concept. It's a very compelling story. Let's publish that. And then from the book, let's go out and springboard into a TV series.
Where are you at in terms of the timeline? You're hoping for 26?
Wow. Yeah. Um, well, the book just got published a couple of
Mm,
weeks ago,
mm.
literally, end of June. We did sort of a tribute to my dad. His birthday was June 24th. So, that was him. And the audiobook, you mentioned audiobook, the voiceover is me.
Is you. Yeah. Did you
It's
enjoy that
horrible.
process?
No, I did not. No, because I'm not an actor or a voice actor by the stretch of anybody's imagination. And people say, well, you got the face for radio. And so um, the music transitions are Chopin's piano, and that was done by my nephew, who is a virtuoso pianist. He's in college with a full ride scholarship as a pianist. So I said, here's a couple of Chopin pieces, give me some transitions. So it's 3 generations for the audiobook,
Mm.
which is funny.
No, I love the piano in it because often audiobooks can be a little bit dry. So to have the little pieces of piano in there, um, it's really cool. And I'm enjoying your voice, if that's
You
any.
poor bastard. I'm sorry, Daniel. I'm sorry.
No, no,
But
I know.
in answer to your question, the timeline is kind of like, so the book comes out. We want to get a little bit of traction with the book and do a little bit of publicity. Then I put together what's called a pitch deck, and it's the elements of the series and the derivatives from the concept of the book. We send it to showrunners, producers, if you will, that have done similar projects that we think would be interested. And instead of going the agent route, which the world has changed, get a showrunner attached. He gets the director and some cast members, which then gives us the budget. We create what's called a Bible. With that, we can have an entree with some streamers to say, okay, I like the concept. I like the people that have been attached. Yes, we'll give you the money you want plus your profit. And if you go over, that's your problem. If you go under, that's great for you. That's kind of the way it is these days. There's no points like, oh, if I make money at the end, nah, not really, because it's streaming, right? And the concept too is these soulmates tend to meet and we see how they were in previous lives. So this can go on forever, right? I mean, you could just go crazy.
Mm. No, it's a solid progressive modern approach to getting the thing made. Um, uh, I was just going to say on the narration, I love it when there's a personal narrator. And again, going back to growing up with my dad, he always narrated his own documentaries. That was like his thing. And
Wow.
yeah, that always added a personal, it added his personal touch to it,
Yeah.
which I learned to appreciate. Well, I feel like I could talk to you for hours, but it's early over there. It's been awesome, and I really appreciate all your insights. And I'm genuinely excited to finish it and to see how this progresses, and eventually watch the series.
I love it. Drop me a line when you're done. Let me know. And, if you like it, give it a review, a great review. If you didn't, then don't ever talk to me again.
For sure.
No.
No, I'm
Wow.
more than happy to, because it's
Yeah.
it's from the heart. So it's yeah,
Bring it
absolutely.
on.
There you go, guys. Honest ratings for the show on Apple are appreciated. If you have a guest suggestion, please feel free to reach out on my website at danielthomas.co. I'm also on social media at Mr. Dan Thomas. Catch you on the next episode.